when they want to, begin having sexual encounters. And the notion that a young person, can give consent, full consent for a sexual encounter that has the potential of changing their entire life. Because from one sexual encounter, like I said, there can be a pregnancy or a sexually transmitted infection or HIV. The notion that teenagers whose brain is still immature, and we need to get into that as well, because the brain is immature. And we know this in neuropsychology and neuropsychiatry and neurobiology. This has been known for decades. The brain is immature in a teenager. And what that means is that the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is right behind the forehead, it's the last part of the brain to mature. And it's the part of the brain that is in charge of executive functioning, making good decisions, considering all your options, considering consequences.
Do you think there is a delay in that development among our educators and our policymakers? Because I think they're immature. I think they don't know how to make mature decisions that are for the well-being of children.
I mean, the notion of saying that a teenager can give consent and can make wise decisions based on just the fact that they have all this information about consent, and they have information about preventing pregnancy using condoms. What we know is that in the moment of stimulation, which could be sexual stimulation or other kinds of stimulation, driving a car really quickly, or being offered drugs or other high stimulating situations. I mean, what do teenagers, after they've made a poor decision and they're sitting with their parents the next day, and the parents say to them, what were you thinking when you did that last night? When you were driving 80 miles an hour, or you smoked weed, or you did some other nutty thing. What were you thinking after all we've talked about? And what does the kid say? I guess I wasn't thinking, right? But it's true. Their brain it's true. They're under a high stimulus situation. The lower part of the brain, not the prefrontal cortex, which thinks rationally like an adult, hopefully like an adult, the lower area of the brain, which is more based in emotions and impulsiveness and reward and pleasure, it takes over. It takes over, that's all. That's what happens. And instead of telling kids that they, that they can make wise decisions, and they just need tons of information, and so we're going to give you all this information about different kinds of condoms and how you put it on, and we're going to have this replica of an erect penis in front of you, and we're going to show you how to put that condom on, which takes 13 steps of, first you have to have the condom, right? Now, these are kids who don't remember to bring their pencil to school. Okay, first you have to have the condom. Second, you have to make sure that it's not expired, that you have to check the date. Yeah, right. They're in the middle of a potentially a sexually encounter, right? And they're about to have intercourse. Okay, yeah, sure. They're going to really check to see if that condom, had the date is not expired. And then they have to open it properly, and they have to they have to handle the condom so that it doesn't break, and it has to put on properly. Are you kidding me? It's a joke. These are teenagers. Which is why the numbers of STIs continue to explode. Now, the number of pregnancies in adolescents has gone down in the United States. We don't know if that's because there's less intercourse, or more use of condoms, or because there's more use of next day contraception. So those are all possibilities. But to lead parents and teenagers to think that this is a plan to give kids condoms and to trust that in the heat of the moment they're going to make the right decision, and they're going to, oh, we're talking about consent. So in the heat of the moment, yeah, right, you have, let's say, you have a 17-year-old guy with a 14-year-old girl, and they're in the midst of preparing for a sexual encounter, and then the 17-year-old is going to be able to figure out if this girl is really giving complete, wholehearted consent for this activity. And the girl is really necessarily is going to be able to have the strength and the wherewithal and the wisdom and the maturity to say, stop, I don't want to go forward now. It's just, they're not living in reality.
Just a last question, Miriam, before we finish up. There's a campaign in Ireland to force denominational schools to teach sex education without regard to the religious beliefs of those schools. The view seems to be that faith and sex education do not mix. What is your view on that? Or do you have a view on that?
Oh, I would say that the contrary of that is the truth. Faith and sex education absolutely do mix. Absolutely, because if the faith message is to honor the innocence of children and to teach teenagers about the sexual appetite